Hey everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we re-journeying back in time to the heart of the ancient Near East to explore the life of a ruler whose reign was as dramatic as it was consequential. Farhad IV, king of the Parthian Empire. His story is a whirlwind of power struggles, betrayal, war with Rome, and a surprising twist involving a Roman slave girl. It's a tale that perfectly captures the turbulent spirit of his era. So, grab your virtual passport, because we're about to uncover the life of one of Parthia's most fascinating and controversial kings. Farhad IV, also known as Farhad IV in Western sources, ascended to the Parthian throne around 37 BC. But his path to power was anything but clean. He was one of over 30 sons of the great king, Orodes II. As Orodes grew old, he chose his favorite son, Pakoros I, as his co-ruler and heir. Pakoros was a military hero, famous for defeating a Roman army. But his promising future was cut short when he was killed in battle against the Romans in Syria. This tragedy threw the Parthian court into chaos. The grieving Orodes, now old and frail, had to choose a new successor from his many remaining sons. His choice fell on Farhad. We don't know for sure. Perhaps he was the most ambitious, the most ruthless, or simply the one who managed to convince his father he was the best man for the job. Whatever the reason, it was a decision Orodes would come to regret. Once Farhad was named heir, he grew impatient. He didn't want to wait for his father to die of old age. In a shocking act of patricide, Farhad IV murdered his own father, Orodes II, to seize the throne for himself. But his brutality didn't stop there. Fearing that his brothers could challenge his rule, he systematically eliminated them. He had all 30 of his brothers executed, securing his position as the undisputed king of Parthia. This bloody beginning set the tone for a reign that would be defined by paranoia and conflict, both at home and abroad. With his domestic rivals brutally silenced, Farhad turned his attention the looming threat from the west, Rome. At this time, the Roman Republic was in its final, chaotic years, dominated by the second triumvirate, Octavian, Lepidus, and the man who would become Farhad's greatest adversary, Mark Antony. Antony, hungry for military glory to rival his partners, saw Parthia as the perfect target. He wanted to avenge the earlier Roman defeat at Carrhae and cement his reputation as a great general. In 36 BC, Mark Antony launched a massive invasion of the Parthian Empire. He assembled a colossal army, numbering around 100,000 men, including Roman legions and allied troops. His plan was to invade through Armenia, bypass the treacherous Mesopotamian desert that had doomed previous Roman campaigns, and strike at the heart of Parthian territory. Initially, things seemed to go well. Antony marched Armenia and into Media Atropatene, a Parthian vassal kingdom, laying siege to its capital, Frospa. But Antony had made a critical miscalculation. He had outpaced his supply train and his siege engines, which were slowly making their way behind his main army. Seeing this opportunity, Farhad IV didn't engage Antony's main force directly. Instead, he led a swift cavalry attack on the Roman supply column. The Parthian horse archers, Imhito and Dorantactics, completely annihilated the Roman baggage train and the 2 legions guarding it. Suddenly, Antony found himself deep in enemy territory, with no siege equipment to take the city and dwindling supplies. As winter approached, the tables had turned dramatically. He was forced to lift the siege and begin a desperate retreat back to Roman territory. Farhad and his Parthian forces harried the retreating Romans relentlessly. The long march back was a nightmare of starvation, disease, and constant Parthian attacks. By the time Antony's battered army finally reached safety, he had lost over a quarter of his men, a devastating blow to his prestige and military strength. Farhad IV had successfully defended his empire and humiliated one of Rome's most famous generals. The victory over Mark Antony was a huge propaganda win for Farhad, but his troubles were far from over. His ruthless consolidation of power had made him many enemies among the powerful Parthian nobility. They saw him as a tyrant. Around 32 BC, while Antony was preoccupied with his final conflict against Octavian, a rebellion erupted in Parthia. A rival claimant to the throne, named Tiridates II, rose up and managed to drive Farhad out of the country. For a brief period, Tiberius ruled as king, even minting his own coins. But Farhad was not one to give up easily. He fled east to the Scythians, a nomadic people who were fierce warriors and often served as mercenaries. He managed to secure their support, and with a Scythian army at his back, he marched back into Parthia to reclaim his throne. The ensuing civil war was brief. Farhad's forces were superior, and Tiberius was forced to flee. He escaped to Roman territory, seeking refuge in Syria. And he didn't go empty. In a bold move, Tiberius had kidnapped one of Farhad's young sons. This is where the story takes another fascinating turn. After defeating Antony at the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, Octavian, now the undisputed master of the Roman world, and soon to be known as Emperor Augustus, had a delicate situation on his hands. He had Tiberius, the Parthian pretender, and Farhad's son as a hostage. Farhad, now securely back on his throne, wanted his son back. This opened the door for diplomacy. Augustus VII, the pragmatist, saw an opportunity for a major political victory without a costly war. He agreed to return Farhad's son, but in exchange, he demanded the return of something padrões forgiumi, the legionary standards, or aquile, that had been captured from the Roman general Crassus at the disastrous Battle of Carrhae decades earlier, as well as any surviving prisoners of war. For the Romans, the loss of these standards was a deep national shame. Their recovery would be a massive propaganda coup for Augustus. Farhad agreed in 20 BC, in a carefully choreographed ceremony. The lost standards were returned to the Romans. Augustus celebrated this as a monumental triumph, minting coins and building monuments to commemorate the diplomatic victory. For Farhad, it was a practical decision. He got his son back and established a fragile peace with his powerful western neighbor, allowing him to focus on internal matters. But Augustus had one more gift for Farhad, a gift that would change the course of Parthian history. Along with his son, Augustus sent Farhad a beautifully educated and charming Italian slave girl named Musa. Farhad was completely captivated by her. She quickly became his favorite wife, and in a highly unusual move, he elevated her to the status of queen. She was not just a concubine, she was Queen Musa. Musa was not just beautiful, she was also intelligent and deeply ambitious. She gave Farhad a son, whom they named Farhad, but who is better known to history as Phraataces, meaning little Farhad. As Phraataces grew, Musa's influence over the king grew. Her primary goal became securing the throne for her own son. But Farhad had other, older sons from his other wives, and they stood in her way. Using her immense influence over the aging king, Musa convinced Farhad to make a fateful decision. Around the SBC, she persuaded him to send his 4 eldest sons to Rome. The official reason was to protect them from court intrigues and to have them educated as a gesture of goodwill, entrusting them to Augustus. But Musa's real motive was to clear the path. Thesis, with his older half-brothers Obstaculos. In Rome, her son was now the undisputed heir to the Parthian throne, with the succession settled in her favor. Musa and her son Phraataces grew bolder. They were not willing to wait for Farhad to die of natural causes. Just as Farhad had done to his own father decades earlier, he now became the victim of a palace coup. Around 02 BC, Farhad IV was poisoned and killed. The culprits were his own wife, Queen Musa, and his son, Phraataces, who then ascended the throne as Farhad V. And so, the reign of Farhad IV, which began with patricide, ended with him being murdered by his own wife and son. It was a reign of extreme highs and lows. He successfully repelled a massive Roman invasion, but his cruelty and paranoia fueled internal rebellion. He secured a diplomatic victory by returning the Roman standards, but in doing so, he allowed a Roman gift Musa into the heart of his court, which ultimately led to his own demise. Farhad's story is a classic tale of power, ambition, and betrayal. It highlights the volatile nature of Parthian politics and the complex, often personal, relationship between the rival empires of Rome and Parthia. His legacy is a mixed one: a brutal tyrant, a skilled military strategist, and a ruler of eminence, and done by the very same methods he used to gain power. What do you think? Was Farhad a successful king or a destructive tyrant? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into ancient history. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And do you won't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next adventure into the past. See you next time.